Have you ever spoken with an influencer and for whatever reason, after the call, they just seem to disappear off the face of the earth? Hi, I'm Freeman, the Closer Clients one, and in this video, I'm going to be discussing how you can close an influencer and to prevent them from just falling off the face of the earth and just losing contact with you. Because just because you get on a call with them and the interaction is great and they say, yeah, we want to work with you, or something along the lines of that, it's not a proper close, and not until the contract has been signed. But even then, I don't consider it a proper close, because there are so many different things that could happen between the point of you signing the contract and you actually closing for them and actually really getting on those calls. A lot of things can happen between that space, and if your communication is not simple, clear, and easy to understand between you and the influencer, it's not a proper close, because you're not closing for them and you're not getting cash in your wallet, in your bank. That is a result, because your end game, okay, the result you want is to be able to get cash in your pocket, cash in your bank account. No other result matters as much as that. And you've just chosen to start closing sales for an influencer. That's your method, okay? You mustn't forget the result. That being said, what is an influencer? An influencer is simply someone who has influence over a very specific audience selling their products or their services. And that being said, I'm going to focus on about 5 to 6 main things that I believe that you need to keep abreast of and remind yourself constantly before and during and after the calls you've had or the interactions you've had with each influencer you've spoken to. The first one is that at the beginning of any interaction, especially over the phone, you need to set up the agenda properly after you've introduced yourself to each other. What do I mean by that? For example, have you ever had a conversation with a friend and there's no real agenda? You just meet with them and just go, hey, like, how are you? And just discuss about so many different things. That's great with friends because you're either catching up or just making new friends. But with a call with an influencer, especially an extremely successful influencer, they don't have as much time. Okay, they need you to divert the call correctly. Otherwise, they will do it and they'll have complete control of the conversation, which is not good for you because it shows that you as a person aren't very good at communication and setting up the call, which you need to be able to do if you're going to close that person's prospects. For example, I've had calls where I didn't set the agenda properly very early on, a couple of months back, when I was first starting. And during those talks, you start learning all these kinds of information, okay? And the call starts to get to the point where it's not helping you. You get learning information, but none of that information is helping you to really build the relationship in the direction you want after you've identified that they are a fit for you and you want to be able to close them, but you didn't direct the conversation correctly because it veered off path, because you didn't set up the agenda properly. And if you don't set up the agenda properly in the calls with the influencer, what's to say that you won't be able to do it for their prospects? Because their prospects may not be as forgiving as they are. Or maybe they will, but you need to set up the agenda properly. The second thing is you need to focus on building the relationship. Don't just use the relationship that you've established before the call to get on the call to just close them, okay? Even when you get on a call or there's serious talk about getting to know them and connect with them, focus on building the relationship. Remember, don't use the relationship to get the close. Use the relationship to continue build the relationship, because the relationship is the deal. It is the close. For example, I've been connecting with an influencer for the past month, and during that past month, I've introduced him to a new event with luxurious brands, and also it has an emphasis on aviation, on private jets, which is something he's extremely passionate about and he absolutely loves. He's also a high net worth influencer who connects and does business with other wealthy people. And during that introduction to the event I introduced him to, to a couple of people, he made some key connections that I believe will most likely bring him at least an additional 8 figures within the next year. I mean, if you were able to form connections with an influencer and build that relationship and gave them these connections and introduced them to people who increased their business by additional 10, 20, 30 million, do you think that that influencer would want to hire you, that they would want to work with you? Of course they would. Anyone would. Because if they're thinking, wow, this person has given me so much value and helped me to generate so much business, if that's what they're doing before we officially work together, imagine what they could do if we work together. You want to get your influencer that excited. Now, I understand you can't do that with every single influencer, but if you can, go ahead and do it. And don't stop providing that value. And the way you do that is just by learning their space. For example, the influencer I just mentioned, he focuses as being a tax strategist, helping people to create insane wealth. So, for example, I just looked for events or business comps where extremely wealthy people and wealthy businesses would be, especially in the luxurious market, because it catered to what he was in the niche that he was focusing on, or one of them. That's how I was able to provide that value. The third thing is that towards the end of the call, you need to establish who's going to send what. For example, if NDAs or contracts need to be sent, who's going to send it? Are you going to send your own contract to the influencer, or are they going to send you theirs? And also, what the documents need to be sent? What documents does the influencer need to send you to help you better understand their services if you guys are going to be working together? The fourth thing is to establish a preferred means of communication. Different influencers are going to have a preferred means of communication. Some might tell you to send it details to a company email, or maybe they have a personal email. Maybe they prefer you to text them or to arrange another call. Whichever way, it is vital to have a preferred means of communication, because not the more successful an influencer is, the more they like to singularly focus on one thing. They're going to have preferred means of communication because they're going to outsource so many different things. And if they want you to have direct contact with them so you can start working together sooner rather than later, then they're going to want to have a preferred means of communication. And if you don't do this, chances are you're going to send some information to a channel that they don't look over very often, and they're going to think that you're not being very professional because they've asked for details within the next week, but they never received it. So there's that miscommunication. You need to avoid that at all costs. The next thing is you need to set a deadline, okay? What's going to happen within the next week for us to be able to work together, okay? For example, you can establish that, okay, when can I expect you, the influencer, to send me the NDA and the contract? And they should say a month, okay? Preferably not a month, but a week, 2 weeks. Don't let them get away by saying a few days. For example, if it's the middle of the week, say a Wednesday, and they say a few days, then get them to commit to a date. For example, you can tell them, okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we say by the end of the week? Sound fair? They go, yeah, sound fair. But not everyone's going to be able to keep to the deadline or the schedule that you set for whatever reason. Maybe they've just lost interest in working with you. Maybe something has come up, okay? I've had influencers who've delayed sending me documents simply because of a family accident, okay? It's happened before. Unexpected things come up. When that's the case, you need to ask questions beforehand. For example, is there any reason that you won't be able to send me X documents by this day? And maybe they'll say, actually, maybe, or they'll say, no, there should be no reason. And you can just press further to ensure that and just say, okay, let's just say for whatever reason that does happen, that this date passes and I haven't received this. What should we do next? Because I won't know whether you've actually had an accident and maybe I need to check up on you, or maybe you're just not interested, because you wouldn't want us to be chasing each other and just left hanging, would you? Of course, no one would like that. So then you need to establish that backup plan. What's going to happen if you don't receive that? Should you check in on them, or should you give them an extra few days? And if you're going to check in on them, how would they prefer you to check in on them? Email? Remember, preferred means of communication. Now, I understand that this can be a lot to take in, but the sixth and the final note is to have a list in front of you, okay? Have a list during the call. So you remember to go through all of these. Have a checklist, just like you would do during a sales call, okay? Where you'd have a checklist, or you should have a checklist of what you should go through, whether it's a checklist in front of you or in your mind. Preferably, I prefer to have a document that lists, say, the top 5 to 6 things that I want to achieve at the end of every call, depending on whether we're going to be able to work together or not. And that's it. Follow these steps and you'll be able to get that few steps closer to finally closing that influencer by building the right relationship, building the right communication relationship between each other, so that you can go from signing the contract to finally closing for them and getting that cash in your wallet, in your bank account, so you can be more of the person you want to be and to live the life you want to live. If you like that video, then let me know down in the comments below, what did you like about this video? What would you like to see next? What haven't I answered? What do you think could be improved? Thanks again for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.